The Panthers have their core locked up for a while. Some contracts will age very fairly, but which ones will end up aging poorly?
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, July 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. That is Jacob Winans. You can follow him on X at JakeW_8. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. On today's show, we are going to discuss the philosophy of the Panthers and running it back once again and other factors on why the decision was right. We are also going to discuss whose contracts could possibly be a candidate, but will possibly fall short of the cut of contracts that will age poorly, and also our top three candidates of ones that eventually will. But Jacob, the more I think about this when it comes to how the Panthers manage things is when you look at how UFA was handled through the Panthers, Vegas Golden Knights, and then you look at what's coming on the horizon in UFA 2026, which there's a lot of big names. I think that the Panthers, their approach, it was really look at what you have internally and solve all your problems then versus trying to outsource all your problems outward and trying to fix everything. We've seen this so quite a few times in free agency on trying to make things stick, as far as we saw that with the Predators last year. We're seeing that with the Canes spending big this year in free agency, but it's never a guarantee as far as bringing in from the outside. So Bill Zito with the decision to bring back guys internally on trying to run it back.
Yeah, and I think there's two parts to it. One of them is the fact that the Panthers were a class above everyone else, and the roster that they brought to the table throughout this year in the postseason. No one else really looked that close to really competing. I mean, Toronto got close, but it was kind of self-inflicted those first two games. When the Panthers found their game, they really just ran the table the rest of that series. Carolina never really looked close. Tampa never really looked close, and then Edmonton, that might have been the most dominant 6-game series I think we've seen, except maybe the Panthers' dominant 6-game series against the Rangers last year, where both of those series, neither opponent won a game in regulation. So it's a situation where the Panthers were so good that I don't know that there really were any weaknesses. And I think Bill Zito's banking on the fact that it's going to take some time for the rest of the league to catch up. So why not lock in the group you have now and see how many more times they can run the table again. So I think that's one part of it. And then the other part of it is the fact that banking on UFAs is very, very risky. A lot of times those guys don't ever get to market. When they do, it's not a true free agency. It's like the Mitch Marner situation where they find a trade partner with an extension already in place. And again, if you look at it, the one who really broke the mold on that was also Bill Zito. Matthew Kachchuck was the first deal of that kind, where they established a sign and trade. He comes over with the 8-year extension. Until Bill Zito did that with Matthew Kachchuck, that wasn't really a common. That wasn't commonplace, and now I think you're going to see that a lot be the trend when it comes to these elite UFAs that are just never actually going to get to a true bidding war, and you'd like to avoid a bidding war anyway. I mean, you don't want to have to overspend for a UFA. You don't want to bank on waiting for some of these guys to hit the open market when they likely never will, and then you're stuck with holes in your roster because you let guys go, and then you're stuck with money that you can't spend, and then you're stuck overpaying guys that you probably wouldn't have given that kind of money and especially that kind of term to to plug those holes on an emergency basis. And you mentioned Carolina. That's a team that spent big this summer. Look at a team like LA. They had cap space, but some of the targets they had, especially on defense, just never made it to the open market, and they overspend on Cody Cece, they overspend on Brian Dumoulin, and those contracts could set them back big time. And then, I mean, you look at Edmonton a couple years ago; they have a hole in net. They've got some issues in goal. Top free agent goalie on the market that summer ends up being Jack Campbell. Probably not worth the contract they gave him. They overpaid big time, and that set them back a few years. So you want to try to avoid those situations. And I think the best way to do that is to give your back-to-back Stanley Cup champs a chance to prove you right again.
Yeah, and I also think about the fact that you if you can't develop what you have, it's going to be a lot difficult as far as filling those holes from the outside. And I think of a team a year from now who's going to have $70+ million in cap space, but how are they going to use it is the Chicago Blackhawks. They will have 70 million. Yeah, a lot of them will be paid to some of their core that they've already started to build, but now they have to start spending a little bit more to even get to cap floor. Yeah, there's the whole taking bad contracts, but as far as trying to fill pieces, not only to fill the floor to get to the floor, but also surround a star, that might come with an overpayment, which they were also reportedly in on Mitch Marner. Is the next free agent that hits the open market, is it going to be 15 for the sake of it being a 15 because it's cap space for some of these teams? That's going to be one thing to wonder, as next year's jump will be 9 million, and then it's going to be another 8.5 million, which is I know that with rising cap, that's also going to be a rising payment for even role players or second middle six guys as well. But also the advantage that the Panthers have put themselves in is the fact that a lot of their extensions have been very signing bonus heavy. Of the core 10, the majority of them are making a base salary of $1 million. The only exception to the base salary not being $1 million is Seth Jones, where remember, before the Panthers traded him, 9.5 AAV. His signing bonus at the beginning fills that, but most of his base salary throughout the entirety of the contract is $5 million. The fact is that the Panthers are 77 of their $109 million payroll, which total payroll is different than your cap hit. The Panthers have 109 this year. 77 of them is handed out on July 1st every year for this core.
Yeah, and the strategy is it's clear you're committing to these guys because one, you're giving a lot of these guys no move clauses, and you're not going to be able to trade them anyway. So when you're in a situation where you're not going to be able to trade them regardless, it makes sense to give them those signing bonus heavy contracts because I mean it's better for the player. It allows the players to not have any. One, it helps the players to be able to take lower AAVs. That's just a fact. If you're getting all your money up front, you're less likely to be that worried about the extra dollars tacked onto the end of the contract or the slightly higher AAV over the term of the deal. You're getting paid, and you're getting paid nicely right away. So there's that part of it. And then having the fact that there's a bunch of no move clauses in here, you're really committing to these guys, and when you have the signing bonus heavy deals, they're almost buyout proof. So they have that security that they're not going to be going anywhere. It also adds an element of pressure to perform, a little bit of incentive and motivation to these guys because you're locked in. You can't really be traded. You can't be bought out. You can't be sent down. You're here. You're expected to perform, and you don't want to be the guy who lets down the rest of the guys and doesn't live up to the contract. So there's a standard that's set there that guys are expected to live up to. And then at the end of the deal, when the no move clauses sort of turn into the trade clauses or the modified no trades, having a base salary of 1 million, even though it doesn't lower the cap hit, it makes it easier to stomach if someone gets moved at the end of their deal, or if the Panthers are at that time beginning a soft rebuild or a retool, or their kind of window of competition competing for titles, and that window and that time frame is closing, and guys end up getting moved on, or are pieces that can go help another young contending team when the Panthers are phasing out of their time in contention. It's easier to stomach that trade and that salary when it's just $1 million base salary. Other teams are more willing to take that on.
Yeah, and this is coming just in time with the new CBA, which will kick in 26, 27, is the fact that signing bonuses can only be up to 60% of the total AAV of the player, which the Panthers, most of theirs exceed over that, which definitely helps them in this next 5-year window, as all of them will be grandfathered in to that point. But we're going to transition to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more of the core 10 for the Panthers and which ones just missed the cut as far as the players that we believe contracts will not age poorly. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your personal CFO give you full visibility and full control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I realized, thanks to Monarch Money, that I had a few subscriptions that I was still paying for, and Monarch Money made me aware of those subscriptions. So with the app, I was able to go ahead and cancel the subscriptions that I wasn't using, and it saved me gave me an opportunity to buy a few more coffees out during the week. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. Thank you to everybody who is joining myself and Jacob Winans on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Another edition of Winans Wednesday here on the show. Armando Velez here with Jacob Winans. And yeah, the core 10 continues to be locked up. Florida Panther fans will have multiple memories of this group for a long time. And fans will definitely get their money's worth based on especially the jerseys that they will purchase, which is the greatest thing of them all. So before we do continue to that, Zack Delpy, Checkers captain, and has been a big part of the Florida Panthers whenever he has been with the team. The big memorable moment came game 6 of the first round against the Boston Bruins. A big goal in the third period to tie it at 5 at the time, right before Etulis Reinen got the go-ahead goal. An all-time leader in goals in Checkers history as well. Got a big playoff hat trick against Bridgeport just a few seasons ago. So Jacob, Zack Delpy, calling it a career at age 35.
Yeah, shout out to Zack Delpy. And I don't think it's a stretch to say the Panthers may not have won these last 2 Stanley Cups if not for Zack Delpy scoring that Game 6 goal against the Boston Bruins and tying that game before they ended up taking the lead and winning that series. He played some huge games, stepped into some huge moments, kind of was unfairly thrown into a 4th line situation against Vegas when he hadn't really been with the team all that much throughout the season, and then ends up becoming a playoff contributor just with some injuries and stuff. But that goal against Boston, that'll live forever in Panthers history. And then also, we don't talk about it enough, but he's the captain of the Checkers and has been for the last few years. He's played a really big part in helping to develop some of the young players that the Panthers have, and helping lead that team to the Calder Cup final, even though he was injured and not playing a ton this year. Just being that leader and helping to develop the players. He's kind of been an extension of the coaching staff down there and helping transition guys and get them ready for the NHL. So Zack Delpy, a big part of the Panthers organization, even though the stats might not jump out at you, the impact is felt, and I think we'll all remember the Steve Goldstein call when he scored that goal against Boston. The Zack Delpy, get up here, I got to give you a hug. I think that's how everybody's feeling right now. So hugs to Zack Delpy on his retirement.
Yeah, Steve Goldstein definitely speaking from the heart on that call back then in May of excuse me, April of 2022 during that moment. But let's get right back to the program on things whenever it comes to just the fact is the core 10 is locked up, but here are a few players that I have thought of that are just going to miss the cut uh as far as players whose contract will age poorly. And one of them might actually surprise you, Jacob, because this one is a little bit of perspective. So, I'm going to name the first two players first. Seth Jones, I don't think that his contract will be one that will age poorly. I do think that this is a contract that I believe will, as long as he's playing some of those shutdown minutes for the Panthers, uh, he's getting paid like a second pair D to and also can still play that role on the top power play, can go up to down to second power play for the Panthers if necessary. I think that he in itself, that is a contract that I do not believe will age poorly. The second one, I believe that will not age poorly. Although he has been injured in two of the last three Stanley Cup finals for the Panthers, Matthew Kachuk is also one that his stats won't necessarily won't explode. I mean, it's crazy. His goal production has actually gone down in the last few years, but the impact of him going at 100% all the time, I do believe that no matter what his physical status is, that you're still going to see that out of Matthew Kachuk. And hobbled Matthew Kachucks are better than a lot of other players in the NHL. So I do believe that as long as he's still playing up to that 100 level, which is the only mode that Matthew Kachuk has, I do believe that it will be a contract that will still age it won't age. It won't be on the poorer side for the Panthers. I'll give you the floor before I name my last one before we transition.
Yeah, as far as the guys who just make the cut, as far as not aging poorly, one that I thought of and I was really tempted to put him in here was Gus Forsling, which I know is shocking. We got him at a great AAV. I just the physical toll that the game takes on his body. He blocks a ton of shots. He takes a ton of hits, logs the hard minutes. I think he may end up racking up quite a list of injuries by the time it's all said and done. But given his AAV, you can't complain about it. So he misses the cut of missing the cut for me just barely. The two guys that I think might not age super gracefully, but won't necessarily be bad deals. I've got Carter Verhaeghe just missing the cut here. I think there were some signs of concern this year as far as the way his game looked in a down year. Then he showed everybody who he really is in the playoffs again. That's what you're really paying him for. And I think as long as he has an opportunity to play with Barkov, he's not going to age terribly. I don't think at the end of the deal he's going to necessarily be worth the money he's being paid right now, but he's already given you kind of an advance on that investment, if you will. And I think I don't think he's going to age terribly given what's expected of him. He's going to be a hard forechecker. He's going to be somewhat one-dimensional offensive player. And I think for the duration of his contract, he's going to have continuous opportunities to do that. So I don't think he's necessarily going to age terribly. The other one that I had was also Matthew Kachuk. Big salary, really highly paid player as far as the Panthers cap outlook goes. And he's been hurt a lot the last couple of years. But in the same breath, that's kind of what makes him Matthew Kachuk.
Yep.
He plays through anything. He's always in the crease. He's taking the hits. He's throwing his body around. He's standing up for teammates. He plays a really gritty, tough, hard-nosed game. You expect some injuries. You expect some games missed, and then you expect big playoff performances, and that's what he's provided the last 3 years. So while his stats might not always be what you expect of a superstar getting paid what he's getting paid, and his games played might dip here and there. Um, I don't think that diminishes his value in the slightest because you know what you're paying for.
Yeah, no doubt. And the last one I have before we transition, this one I don't, and this is more of perspective on why I put this player on just missing the cut of a contract be aging quite poorly. And that's Aaron Ekblad. It's due to the fact that his worth on the open market could have been somewhere around 9.5. The fact that the is that he chose to stay here, taking less, and he's still going to be on a top pair, which that top pair of Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad are making some of the same salary that one top defenseman is making on some teams. Like for the example of Colorado, Cale Makar and Devontae's combined maybe around 17 million. Bouchard and Nurse combined for 19 million. That pair alone is around half of what a lot of other teams are putting their in and out, uh, night in and night out for what they're putting there. So that's why Aaron Ekblad for me is just short of the cut. Is right on the cut line as far as why I don't believe his. Yeah, the injuries do rack up. He's logged a lot of mileage during his time with the Florida Panthers, but mine is a little bit of perspective on why I do believe that it won't be the yeah, it'll be a depreciating asset by the time it's at the tail end, but the fact that we didn't expect them to even sign at this number in the first place, it's hard for me to really see it as view it as one that will be like an anchor to the Panthers in the future.
Yeah, I it's hard for me to really disagree with that. I think I would definitely put him into the other category of guys who aren't going to age well. And I'll go into my explanations for that when we transition. But I
Yeah.
he just barely crosses that line for me.
Okay. And yeah, let's actually transition to segment number 3 where we will discuss our 3 players who we believe that contract will age probably the worst of the core 10. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment 3 here on this Wednesday, July 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Armando Velez here with Jacob Winans on another edition of Winans Wednesday. So 3 of the contracts that we believe that will age poorly for the Florida Panthers here as they have the core locked up until 2030. So I want to give you the floor to pick up where you left off on Aaron Ekblad, along with giving the rest of your list for players whose contracts could age poorly in these next 5 years or even beyond.
For sure. So number one for me, well, number three for me really is Aaron Ekblad. I think by no means is his contract a bad deal. It's actually a great deal as far as the AAV on it. The concern for me is the term, um, which was kind of a necessary concession to make in order to get him to sign at that AAV and keep the window open. And the Panthers needed
Yep.
every penny of that. So
Yep.
no indictment on the player. He took a very team friendly, unselfish deal to stay, given that he was arguably overpaid on his last contract. But you can't really make a strong case for that when he's got 2 Stanley Cups to his name. So I think as that deal ages, it's not going to look great for 2 reasons. One, the injury history. Guys don't get healthier as they get older. Typically, he's got a pretty long list of injuries. He's got a concussion history. He's got major injuries to both of his legs. He had the really bad broken leg injury. He had a really bad ankle sprain. He's had multiple shoulder surgeries. He's a guy who's really fought through everything. He played an entire playoff on a broken foot. I mean, he's a true warrior, which is something that you admire, but also something that will eventually take its toll. He hasn't played a full season in a very long time. He's not going to give you 82 games. That's just not the way he plays. He plays a hard game, and he's going to miss time. And part of the issue with that is you can somewhat stomach the time on IR every year if you have the depth and the cap to have guys who fill in, which we have right now. But long term, you may not, and it may be a situation where if you're paying everybody, you need your guys available. And I think also foot speed has never really been his strength, and that doesn't tend to get better as you age either. So, just his positional soundness is going to have to be nearly perfect over the duration of the deal in order for him to remain effective, because his foot speed is not going to really improve at this stage. The other two are Sam Bennett. Uh, Maybe a little bit of a surprise, but you're paying a lot for a guy who isn't going to consistently be a 50-plus point scorer. You're paying him because of his playoff impact and his culture impact. Eventually, when the Panthers are no longer a playoff contender and no longer a Stanley Cup contender, you're still going to be paying him a very high dollar amount for production that may not be what it used to be. And I think the ceiling with the Panthers is always going to be 2C for him. He'll never be Barkov. He'll never take that number one center job from Barkov. So you're paying a lot for a 2C who we expect to become a 3C at some point in this deal, because Anton Lundell, his development is on pace to make him the 2C long term. So you're going to have a very, very expensive middle six forward, but he's as good as it gets as a middle six forward. And every game you get out of Sam Bennett right now, there aren't many Sam Bennetts in the league, so it's hard to complain about it. It's just something to be aware of. This deal is not going to age wonderfully, and that's the chance you're willing to take when you keep a guy like Bennett. And then my last one is the very obvious one, Brad Marchand. No disrespect to Marshy, we're happy he stayed. More than deserves to get paid after all these years of taking pay cuts in Boston, but unless he decides to become Jaromir Jagr, he's probably not going to be playing top end hockey at 43 years old, especially at his size. So that's one that you sign that contract and you know it's going to age badly, but you do it anyway because he earned his spot here and he's a culture guy and he fit in so well. And you want 3 good years out of him before you stomach the last 3 years where you're probably gonna not love that deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned it best about the injuries and being on the shelf. And the fact is that the Panthers, once they could still use the LTIR loophole for at least one more season. We spoke in as far as spottiness about what's going on with the new CBA. Another thing about the new CBA that's going to kick in next year is the fact that your 20 players that you dress have to be cap compliant. So there's still a little bit of a loophole still there for LTIR and guys being shelved, but the loophole has somewhat closed for teams across the NHL. Not this upcoming season, but the one coming after. And we're going to see how the Panthers are going to be able to manage things around there. So Marchand and Bennett are both on my list as far as that. The clauses changing for Sam Bennett right at 2030 when, like we mentioned, the bonuses are paid and we see a possible graduation from one part of the lineup to the other as far as Anton Lundell's development, which he's scheduled for his contract to expire at his age 28 season. So that will be really entering into his prime. So that's while Bennett will be way past the end. We're looking for the playoff performances over what we see as far as the regular season, which even there were a lot of national pundits that were talking about how Zito had to bend a little bit. Most people would love the deal at 7. I'm one included. Maybe it was like a 1 million more than what we believed he was eventually going to get. Brad Marchand's another. What's going to happen on the tail end of the deal? We are only really looking forward to the front end of what that's going to look like. But hey, get it while they are playing their best hockey, and a rejuvenated Marchand is in the mix. And then the third one, this one might surprise you a little bit. Carter Verhaeghe. I have Carter Verhaeghe up here. I want to see how much of a bounce back regular season he actually has. Will his scoring be at the a- around his averages, around the 35s, 30, 35s, around there where he's usually scoring? Because this was an immense drop off. But the shooting percentage, we saw how that number was a little bit skewed in the other direction. So how will it dry up again? Will it be another point into where we are waiting for postseason Carter Verhaeghe over and over again? Because how many more years can we see of low 20s in the goal scoring category and then just waiting? Can the Panthers afford to wait so many more regular seasons as he starts to age? And the fact is, we spoke about Carter Verhaeghe, and yeah, he's playing on the same line as Barkov, but he's more of the player that works better off puck instead of creating his on his own. So that's going to be one thing that I'm going to wonder about how Verhaeghe's contract also ages throughout this window.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I think when it comes to Verhaeghe, like you said, he's not a guy who's going to create his own offense, and historically, he also hasn't really been a huge power play guy either. He doesn't
Yeah.
really rely a ton on power play scoring. So, how can he continue to find ways to produce at 5-on-5, or can he develop into more of a power play asset? Remains to be seen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the advantage when it comes to Verhaeghe is the fact that the Panthers are going to have three really good centers for the foreseeable future. If he's
So
not
I
with
agree.
Barkov, he'll be with Bennett. If he's not with Bennett, he'll be with Lundell. Those are all three guys who can help create offense for him, which gives him the opportunity to be productive anywhere from lines 1 to 3. So I think that's the advantage he has playing as an off puck winger. Uh, all three Panther centers right now are capable of helping him to create offense where he doesn't really create offense himself. And then also just the Paul Maurice system. Uh, Nothing about the way Carter Verhaeghe is going to age is really going to stop him from being a really effective forechecker. And a
Yeah.
lot of Carter Verhaeghe's offense comes from the fact that he is a relentless forechecker. He gets in, he throws hits. I mean, just look at the goal against Edmonton where he forechecks, gets away with a little high stick against Troy Stetcher, but that patented Carter Verhaeghe forecheck, separating body from puck, forcing the turnover. That's intangible effort, and I think even as he ages, that's not going to leave his game. So if Paul Maurice is still the coach, Carter Verhaeghe still got a chance to be effective, and that's why I don't think it's a disaster contract. But um, it'll also somewhat depend on the development of Mackie Samoskevich too, because if you add another really high quality scoring winger into that top six, and over time that becomes the power play asset, maybe Verhaeghe never really gets a chance to be the big power play scorer, and yeah, you could see his numbers dip a bit.
Yeah, we will see about that, and this is something that we'll have to revisit deep into the archives 5 years from now when the contracts are over and just see how we fared. But we are trying to predict the future. We're trying to see how the Panthers manage things through this next cycle, which it's still crazy to believe. Two Stanley Cup championships, but a chance to do some more and to continue the winning and continuing to create the community that is in South Florida, a winning culture of hockey that brings a lot of people together and most importantly, a lot of memories. So, Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of Winans Wednesday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can find you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at JakeW_8. I don't usually have a whole lot to say on my sign offs, but I will say today, shout out to my mom. Happy birthday, mom. Uh, Wednesday, July 9th. That is my mom's birthday. So had to throw that in there.
Happy birthday to Jacob's mom, Jill, and hopefully that you enjoy a great birthday with her, my friend. So thank you so much and for joining, and see you next week.
Thanks for having me.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.